graph some quadratic functions. And so today we're going to graph those. Now, quadratic functions, if you remember, are ones with x squared. And so f of x equals x squared. What is that a graph of? It's a graph of what's known as a parabola. Okay, so if you notice here the type of graph, it's a parabola. One of the things about an x squared graph, it's either going to open, at least the ones we're going to look at, are going to open up or down. Now, they do open left and right, but we're not going to focus on those today. So the graph either opens up or down. We have the standard form, which is what we've already seen before and what we've learned before. And so a little bit about this graph. Okay, if you notice here in the graph, we have a line that runs through the middle. This is actually an invisible line. We call it the axis of symmetry. So I want you to think about, okay, in the real world, what would be something that would be similar to the axis of symmetry?
Equator.
The equator, okay, cuts it into two, very good. What's another thing? What? The axis, okay. And the other thing, it also, that would cut it in half is every day you drive on the highway, right? So what would that be similar to? The median, okay. And basically what the axis does is it cuts it directly into half, into two equal parts. It's a mirror image on both the left and the right. Now another feature of the graph is it has what's known as a vertex. Okay, that vertex is either the lowest point or the highest point. How could it be the highest point on a graph? If the graph opens upside down, good. So if the graph opens like this, your vertex will be the highest point. Okay, so we're going to look at how you actually graph these today. So some things that you need to highlight and make sure that you have on the note sheet I gave you. The axis of symmetry we find by this, negative b divided by 2a. That is how we find the axis of symmetry. X equals negative b over 2a. And so then the question is, well, what is b? B is up here in the equation. It's the coefficient of x. A is the coefficient of x squared. Okay, the next characteristic you need to understand, the y-intercept is always c. C is always the number without a variable in our equation. So those are the two things you need to make sure that you get down from that. Okay, the other thing, if a is greater than 0. So let's think about that. If it's greater than 0, what type of number is it?
Positive.
Positive. So in other words, all we're saying is if a is positive. So let's think about that. If a is positive, the graph opens upward. So the graph opens this way, and it has a minimum. So let's think about that. If a is positive, when we think of positive people, we think they're usually smiling, right? If a graph opens up, that looks real similar to a smile. If a is less than 0, what type of number is that? That's a negative. And we know that negative people are usually sad and they're usually frowning. Okay, negative people, so this one's going to be a frown. It's going to open upside down. And a little bit about that graph, it's going to have a maximum, a high point. And so today we've got two tasks. You can see that we've got two types of problems we're going to look at, and that's it. So the first type of problem, find the vertex, the equation for the axis of symmetry, and the y-intercept for each graph. So this is going to be, you look, you identify, you write it down. So first of all, the vertex is the lowest point on the graph. So where's the lowest point on the graph? Yeah, right here, right? So I need to figure out the coordinates of that point. So that's just identifying what are the coordinates of the vertex. Okay, let's flip it around, negative 1, 0. There you go. That's your first answer. Negative 1, 0. So you're either going to find the lowest point or the highest point, depending on how it is. Now, I know the axis is going to go smack down the middle, okay? So it's going to go right here. What value is that? Negative 1. And so the question is, how do we write this? Because if you notice, they say equation. All we're going to do is put an x equals in front of it, because an x equals means a vertical line. Okay, we learned x equals is a vertical. What's a horizontal? Y equals. Good. And then last but not least, the y-intercept. So here, all I'm looking for is where it crosses the y-axis. So where does it cross the y-axis? 1. There you go, 3 answers. Pretty straightforward. Okay, let's look at the next slide. I want you to do this one for me. I want you to do the vertex, the equation, and the y-intercept based on what you see on the graph. The vertex, the equation, and the y-intercept. Now make sure you identify which one is which. Okay, we've got 3 of you that are going up and putting your answers. There you go. Nice job. So those are the answers. The vertex is 2, 3. The axis is x equals 2. And the y-intercept is -1. Questions? There you go. Next one. Same thing. Vertex, axis, y-intercept. Yep, love the y-intercept. Okay. Yep, go ahead. Okay, so here we go. Vertex is at 1, 3. Axis, x equals 1. Y-intercept 4. Any questions? That's the first part of your homework. That's all you have to do. Okay. Now the second part of your homework, what we're actually going to do is we're going to be given an equation, and we're going to now have to graph. Now notice what it says. Find the vertex, find the axis of symmetry. So the very first thing, if you remember on that very first slide, what was the one thing I highlighted and said you're going to have to use this today?
X equals -b over 2.
Right, and that was what the axis was. Okay, so the axis is x equals -b divided by 2a. And so now is when I'm going to use it. So let's identify what a, b, and c are in the equation up at the top. What are a, b, and c? A is 1, yep. What is b? B is 4. What is c? 3. All it is, a is x squared. B is your x, C is your one that doesn't have a variable. Now if any one of those don't appear, it's 0. So now I need to plug in what I know. B is 4, right? So I'm going to plug in 4. Now notice I put a negative with that. What did we say A was?
2a.
It was 1, right? Because there's nothing in front there. So now I have 2 times 1. So let's simplify that. What is -4 divided by 2? -2. So I'm going to go ahead and put a vertical line there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by graphing my axis, and I'm going to graph it at -2. Now notice how we used that. We used a dashed line, so go ahead and graph that in. Now what do you know about that dashed line? Ooh, having a hard time seeing that. Let's change colors real quick. Yep, what do we know about that axis?
That's the middle of the line.
That's the middle of the line, very good. Okay, there we go. Then you can see it a little bit better. All right, so that's where the middle of the parabola is. And so now what I need to do is I need to find out where that vertex point is. Okay, so to find the vertex, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to take -2. And see, since it says x, I'm going to plug it in the equation up here for x. So y equals -2 squared plus 4 times -2 plus 3. So let's go through and solve that. So does everybody see where I plug the -2 in? I come up here to the equation up at the top, and I plug it in wherever I saw x. So what is -2 squared? 4. Okay, what is 4 times -2? -8, and then 3. So 4 plus -8 plus 3. What value of y do you get? -1. So where do you think I'm going to put a dot? -1. Now notice where I put it. I put it on the axis. Now just for kicks, can somebody tell me what direction this will open?
Down. Down.
Y up. You're right. Y up. You're close with the positive. Why?
Oh, no.
How do we know it opens up? What do we think about up? We think of like a smile, right? Yeah, what number is this right here? It's positive. And so since that is positive, we know the graph's going to open up. Now, the last thing, and that was just for kicks, just to see how well we did. The last thing we're going to find is the y-intercept. So do we remember on that very first slide, what's the y-intercept going to be? C. What's C in that problem? 3. C is right here, folks. So I'm going to come up here and put a dot at 3. Now, I want you to imagine that the red line is a mirror. And I want you to put another dot that's on the graph. Imagine that red line is a mirror. And I want you to put another dot that is on the graph. Okay, so Em's going to now put up the other point she put down. Yep. Good job. Because remember, it's a mirror. So if I have this yellow dot, I've also got this orange dot. And then what do you think we have to do last? Connect them. Yep. Now, one of the things about a parabola is it's a curve. It's not a V. So we don't want to draw straight lines. Okay, because there is a graph that looks like a V. So make sure you use curved lines, please. Connect the dots. There you go. Now, we're going to go through and look at another one. Okay. Okay, so we got it down. So if you notice, we got 2 more to go. So we're going to have plenty of practice on these. So first of all, graph y equals 3x squared plus 6x minus 4. So where do I start? That's the very first thing I do. The axis of symmetry. So I have my axis, right? What does x equal? -b over 2a. So let's identify a, b, and c. What's a?
3.
What's b? What's c? -4. So here, in my problem, -b over 2a will be -6 over 2 times 3. So what does x equal, folks? -1. Nice job. So I'm going to go ahead and put a dashed line at -1. What do you find next?
The
Vertex. So how do I find the vertex? Plug in -1 where? And the x right up here. Plug in -1, so I get y to equal 3 times negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 4. So 3 times negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 4. So when I square negative 1, what do I get? Positive 1, right. So I have 1 times 3, which is 3, plus negative 6 minus 4. What's your y value? Negative 7. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whoo, just barely fit. Just for kicks, what direction does it open? Up. Very good. Why? Because the 3 is positive. All right, last thing I need to find is the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept going to be?
4.
The y-intercept will be right here, which is negative 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, I know one other point on the graph, and what other point is that? If I start here at the yellow, where do I go to get my other point? Left, 2, on the opposite side, yep, and there you go. Now, this next one that we're going to do in class, okay, is going to be one that you actually do the whole thing for me. Okay, we're going to do it as a class. So, very first, y equals negative 3x squared plus 6x minus 5. Who wants to do the axis for me? Okay, axis. So we're going to start with the axis. So if you're working that at your desk, you can follow along. Okay, go ahead if you want to draw it. So we got x to equal 1. So we went ahead and graph that. Okay. Anybody want to find the vertex for me? Vertex? Back table. One of those. I want somebody in the back. Jeff or Christian? Which one? You guys have this hand. So we're going to find the vertex. So remember, this was our axis. Here's our vertex. What are these going to do it?
I'll do it.
Oh, they got it. So we're going to flip then. Just got, okay. Let's see. Yep, and don't forget 5. Don't forget, it's fine. Okay, so who's going to come do the next step? Okay, so who's going to come do the next step for me? Back group. Somebody in the back. Okay, will you go ahead and plot it for me? Good job. Okay, so there you go. The vertex is -2 because remember, all we do is we just plug 1 in for x. Okay. Next one, I need somebody to find the y-intercept. Okay, that, I think a guy had, was it in this table? Y-intercept. Y-intercept is, okay, so go ahead and plot the -5. And if you will, go ahead and plot an additional point that's on the graph. Okay, here's the center, right?
Oh, that's a center.
Okay, there you go. And so there's your additional point. Last but not least, we just need to go ahead and put our curve through it. So once again, the process, find the axis. Once you get that number, plug it into the equation. Once you get that value, you plotted everything, find the y-intercept. Same 3 steps every time. Questions over what we've done? Okay, so what is one part of a parabola?
The axis.
The axis of symmetry. What's another part?
Vertex.
The vertex. What is another part that we use to graph? The y-intercept. Okay, good job. All right, so now today's assignment. Let's go ahead and look in your book so that you understand what you're going to be doing. So I need you to turn right now to page 549. Oh, yours is 550. Mine must have been 549, the one I had at home. Okay, so page 550. This is what I need you to do. Yes, 24 through 33. Now, 24 through 27 are graphs. So those are just like the 3 we did in class. If you want to use graph paper, that's fine. Otherwise, you can use just roll them up with paper. I have graph paper in my top drawer on the right side. 28 through 33. Those are the ones that you identify. Those are the ones just like we looked at the first 3 problems on today's notes. So that's the plan. Pretty straightforward. If you get working now, you should get mostly done. Okay, questions?